Good afternoon, everyone. We're here at Jason and Erika's amazing yard on Spring Road in North Campbell River. I just took a little walk around myself and I'm just fascinated by all the beautiful fencing and unique things that these two have done in this yard. So we're going to go through and we're going to have a look at their vegetable garden first. One of the most unique features about this yard is the work that these two have put into the fence around their vegetable garden. They have incorporated all kinds of recycled bike parts into the fence, which makes it a piece of art, as well as keeps the deer and other creatures of the forest out of their vegetables.
This area of our garden was the first area that we worked on when we moved into our property. And it was on our honeymoon in Egypt, the last day in Cairo, where we sat down in a coffee shop and on the back of a napkin designed the start of this garden, which included a small pond and some asparagus.
I just had a piece of the asparagus. It was ever so good. Something, again, I'm not successful with yet.
We built this area about 3 years ago, and we have a seating area, and behind it we have our raised flower beds, or veggie garden beds. And we've got our rhubarb, tomatoes, cucumbers and zucchini a little further down, and some lettuce and kale.
I'm just going to keep taking in the fence too, because I just find it quite fascinating, all these bike parts. This piece here especially is so beautiful. What a great idea, Jason. Upcycle and garden.
It's actually my wife's idea.
Okay, well, we'll give the credit to Erika then. Oh, your squash are doing so well. Must be a nice spot for them.
Yeah, I put in these little traps to try and catch some slugs.
Oh, we're getting so many slugs this year.
Yeah, so I've got a little container with some beer and a little house over top of it, and keep the water out, and gotten a few so far. We've been taking these courses through Greenways Land Trust. They have these, the first couple I went in class and with an instructor, but lately they've been online. So we've been taking courses on how to condition the soil and improve the compost and work with a year-round garden. So we've been trying to incorporate some of those into what we're doing here.
Yeah, I've taken some of those courses myself. They're very, very good.
Yeah.
So Jason and Erika were just showing me their mason bee house, and they seem to have found the best place in their yard for it. And they've got it directly beside these beautiful fruit trees, so that will help with pollination, and hopefully they get a great fruit crop.
This one. So this is our most productive apple tree, and you can see it's split right here. So we didn't used to have the fencing in here, and when we've had it for quite a long time, and when it was just brand new, a bear came. It had like 2 apples on it, and they were just about ready. A bear came and pulled it out of the ground, split it in half, and left it for dead. So we didn't know if it would survive. We tied the 2 sides together with some pantyhose and just left it to cover the roots, and left it, and it survived. So the next year we sort of propped it up, and it has grown really strong ever since.
This apple tree here, when we went to a garden sale in Sayward, it was a closing out of a garden center, and it just said mystery tree. We had no idea what it was, so we purchased it and we planted it, but it was like 5 years, no fruit. We finally got our fence finished, which kept the deer out, and then it started to produce apples. And the first year we had large green apples like this big, almost like softballs. So that was pretty good there. And then we've got a few other berry bushes in here, including some lingonberry and some blueberry, and then we have a small fig tree that we picked up here from one of my wife's friends. What was his name?
Hands.
Hands.
Rena. She gave it to me as a little twig. So.
Yeah. So we've been growing this for a couple of years now.
Jason, can I get you to go back to that berry? You said you have blueberries, and what was the other kind of berry?
These ones here, lingonberries. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're really common in Scandinavia, and I have Finnish roots, so we saw them for sale and we thought, oh, let's give them a try.
Yeah.
Do they taste good?
They're kind of cranberry-ish.
Oh, nice.
These are both pear trees. They've been in the ground for about 5-6 years each, and we haven't had any pears. The one tree flowers each year, but the other one doesn't. So this year I went to my sister-in-law's house and cut off a branch of one of her flowering pears, and I spread it around this tree while it was in bloom, and I now have about 6 pears that are starting to form on this tree.
I was going to say behind them too, we've got the thimbleberries growing, so we really tried to encourage some of the native plants to come back and eventually sort of transitioning to have some native plants in our garden.
And over here, Erika, you have chickens. You're pretty food self-sufficient, aren't you?
So these are a new addition this year. We just got chickens this spring, and we have Dolly over here, and we have Loretta, and we have Reba. So this is their home, but we let them free range a little bit in the yard when the dog is safely put away, and when we're out, because we also get eagles, so we need to keep a close eye on. So it's been wonderful having fresh eggs from these ladies, and they're just a lot of fun. We've got a bench set up here because we just really enjoy sitting with our cup of coffee and hanging out with them.
So I'm guessing by their names you're a country music fan?
No, not at all. Actually, not at all. But I just thought, chickens are kind of country, aren't they? Just by nature.
This is such a beautiful yard, you two.
Well, it was these big trees that really sold the house to us when we first purchased the place.
I have huge timber in my own yard too, and I love it.
This is our greenhouse. It's 8 by 10, and the glass for the greenhouse came from our old windows. So when we redid the windows in our house, we kept all the old window and their frames, took out the frames, and then cut the glass to fit into this greenhouse space. We've got our mint growing out front here to mix in our mojitos, and in back we started off a number of our seeds and seedlings before we transplanted them out to the garden.
What a fantastic way to recycle. And then we have this lovely little pond oasis with a wonderful weeping Japanese maple and lots of ferns. This is like a beautiful shade garden. These folks are lucky enough to have some beautiful, beautiful sitting areas all over this yard. And now I'm just going to take you to the edge of where they have fenced. Their yard does go further down, and Eric has built this wonderful tree house for their son to play in. And another area to relax.
So we just put this little garden in this year. So we've got some squash and some tomatoes. And then we were looking for a place during the COVID shutdown when we were doing some homeschooling. My son made this painting about the solar system, which looks really cool when you light it at night from behind. So we put that here. And then we've got this wisteria, which for many years didn't bloom, but now it blooms like crazy. And we've already done a big cutback this year, but it's quite impressive when it's all flowering.
So Erika and Jason, thank you so very much for inviting me to this wonderful yard.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I have been lucky enough to be invited to the garden of Sue Schwarz, and Sue is going to show us some of her plants and help us identify them. Thank you for inviting us, Sue.
You're welcome. Welcome to the Chateau Schwarz. So this is just a side garden, but the growing things in here alternate. So right now there's calla lilies in here, but before that there was something else. There's wanda primulas under here that were purple, and this is all a bank of white. So next will be sunflowers. They come in behind, and you can see some pops of purple with the campanulas. I wanted to point out too that there's all kinds of found objects that you can turn into planters and stuff. This was a statue I bought at Walmart, I think it was, and I dropped it and broke it, and it had a big hole in it, so I put a sedum in it. So rather than throw it out, I ended up having a nice planter. For plant identification, this is called Wormwood, and it's a great plant. If you touch it, kids love it. It just feels like velvet when you brush it. The peony behind it is almost done, but you can see the sunflower coming up behind. Right beside it is a volunteer feverfew, which I've planted. And before I talk about the statue, I just want to point out that none of these are deer food. This is not a buffet for a deer. They will not touch any of this. So the statue is a concrete statue, but behind is a hypertufa gunnera leaf that I made in my mom's garden. And it's very easy to do. You just have to be able to mix cement. This is purple elderflower. This is a new plant. I just planted it this year, or the end of last year, and it'll have tall, spiky, you can see some of them starting to come. They're just little nodules right now, but they're, it's called Bugbane as well, and they're tall, spiky white flowers about that tall. First plant behind my garden goddess, I have no idea what it is. It was one of those buy it from a plant sale, and I liked it, so I kept it. Next to it is this big lovely coreopsis, and it gets covered in little starry yellow flowers, so it's absolutely beautiful. Behind it is a garden Meister Fuchsia, which is going to grow about this tall, and it'll have those red flowers all summer long on it. Nicotiana beside it, more Wanda primulas, which are done. And beside that is blue flax. You'll notice the ground's a little dug up. I just gave Elaine a clump because that's a really good perennial to have in the garden that is deer proof. This peony I just dug out of my son's garden because he didn't want it. And I just noticed it's got two flowers, two different colors. So I don't know how that happened. And then coming along, more blue flax, pink champion, the velvety looking one with the fuchsia colored flowers. In front of it is a wallflower, dianthus, and some daisies. I don't know what the name of that one is, but it's a really great plant. It grows in a clump and it doesn't spread or get leggy. In behind it is viscaria. I'm just going to step in here. These guys will grow about this tall. Tall spiky things. This is Spiderwort, more peony, and the Foxgloves. Now the Foxgloves, what you need to do if you want to introduce them into your garden is when they go to seed, watch for the little babies and just put them somewhere for next year. And if you do that every year, you'll end up with foxglove all over your garden. Let's see what else. More feverfew, more the daisy, dianthus, peony. This is, you can see a little bit better, that garden Meister Fuchsia. He's really lovely. Lavender. And these little guys are mimulas. I tried them for the first time this year. They're an annual. And I see I got some celery in there by mistake. I don't know how I did that. So there's a clump of celery there.
So this is one of the bonuses of Sue's yard. I just popped up onto her deck to have a look and check out this view. I don't know how you ever get anything done. I would just want to sit on this deck and look.
A couple of years ago, I started doing these, what I called fairy gardens, but they're really more Zen gardens. And I sold them at the art festival in Campbell River, the one that's out on the street. And I did about 40 of them and came home with only 3, so they were pretty popular. These ones I do for myself every year. I replant them to change them up, because by the end of the summer that'll be completely overgrown. The plants really take over, and it looks really funky when it's all filled in. And we'll show you one out in the driveway later that's filled in.
Well, maybe if we're lucky enough, we can talk Sue into doing a workshop for us.
Planting? Sure. Shade garden here, and mainly hostas. There's some heuchera in there, a sedum in the sunny corner on the right, and then in behind there's some more heuchera. There's only 3 varieties of hostas in there, but it's pretty filled in now with the rhodo that we're just finishing up deadheading. If you swing over to the left, this is called an empress tree. It gets tall, spiky purple flowers that kind of look like a toilet bowl brush, and it's getting a bit too top heavy, so I might have to trim the top and see if I can get it to bloom down below again. This is the main flower bed in the backyard. My husband did all the hardscaping here. all the patio stones and walls and retaining walls. So it starts with sweet peas, foxglove, there's a strawberry for my grandkids, pink champion, lavender, heuchera. This one's pulmonaria. I think that's what it's called. It's really pretty. It comes in the spring and it has little blue flowers, but it's all done now.
Sue, can I ask you a question? You've got heuchera in both your shade garden and a sun garden.
Yeah.
Does it do well in both?
Yes. Yeah, it's a really hardy plant. And the reason I have it in so many places is because of the purple. It's such a great contrast for any yellows or oranges. If you're an artist, you know that yellow and purple go together. And lilies are coming in the back. There's going to be a million of them. There's pink phlox in the back. Of course, the flowering dogwood tree.
That is so beautiful.
And there's dahlias coming. I think that might be one from Elaine in the back there. And there's hollyhocks coming. So in the end of summer, that'll be tall and they'll be filled with hollyhocks there. This is a real cool one. I wish I knew the name of it. Somebody out there probably knows, but I absolutely love this plant. And these are the mimulas that I planted in the front. Very colorful for the early, and they're an annual. And those are also the ones the deer wouldn't eat. And then in the back here, there's this, and here's one of these things that I got. I don't know what it is. It's a purple cuppy thing, and somebody gave it to me, or...
Is that the official Latin name?
Yeah, the cuppy thing, yeah. So rather than plant trees in the ground in our garden, we've chosen to put them in pots. Now, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. This is a relatively new addition. It's a fig. So we're hoping that it will grow to the point where it'll produce some figs, but we don't want it to grow too big. Some of the other trees, the maples that are in the garden, are getting a bit big for their pots. And so the maples are a little bit top heavy. Now these are about 4 years old, and in a good wind, which we get sometimes here off the water, they can topple. So we've moved the ones that catch the wind in the spring. The winter doesn't seem to be a problem because by then they've lost their leaves and they can't catch the wind as well. So that's why these two are over in a more protected area, but it provides a lot of shade in the garden for us, which we like when we're sitting out here. So for the most part, we do an organic vegetable garden, and I'll say for the most part because there are some people who are absolutely religious about being organic. I buy some of my plants from a nursery, which means that they aren't necessarily organic. But for the most part, I try and start them from seed. Most of the lettuces are from seed, the beets, the carrots, the leeks, the beans, the arugula, the Swiss chard, the peas, and but I did buy some basil already planted up and stuff like that. So in here I have last year's garlic, which I've cut the snapes off, or scapes, or snapes, or whatever they're called, and eaten those up, fried up in garlic butter, very nice. And when these all die off, I'll harvest my garlic cloves underneath, and then that'll give room for the kale to start growing.
Is that Russian kale?
That is, I call it dinosaur kale. I think it's called Russian or black Tuscan. And you can see that it's got quite a few bug holes in it. So I have to use diatomaceous earth, which is ground up sea crustaceans that you put around, and that cuts open the bellies of predator bugs. So I see I have to do that. This here is kohlrabi, and I just thinned it because I think I planted it too thick. Then I have butter crunch and romaine in here. One of the things that we do is we put eggshells in all our compost, and all these beds have been topped with about 4 or 5 inches of compost, and you can see the eggshells in there, and that does help with slugs. And I don't believe in growing rows, so I try to do things all in just mass planting. So I've got cucumber here, these are leeks, and beans coming up the pole. Carrots are covered from the carrot rust fly, and I just go to the thrift store and buy a sheer curtain and use old hula hoops, and then the fly doesn't get in there and eat through the carrots.
Can I ask you when you planted your carrots?
I planted my carrots about 4 weeks ago.
Okay, I'm never going to be able to grow carrots.
But they love being in here. It's like a little sauna for them. This holds the heat in, as well, and yet when the water goes through it. So they actually grow way better inside here.
Okay.
And I did have the beets covered at one time too, because I have a million birds here that love to fly here and eat all the tops of my seedlings. This is fennel, which is the bulb type fennel. It'll grow a bulb which you cook in Parmesan and garlic butter. It's delicious. But we use the tops at this time of year and put it in our salads. Green onion and fresh dill, which we also put in our salads. And then the far bed is Swiss chard and celery, which I don't eat the celery. I dry the leaves and make an herb that I cook with. Arugula, tomatoes, peas. This is the lettuce bed, and there you can see there's some herbs in the front. And then we have blueberries underneath the thing there. It's going to be a really good year for blueberries.
Can I ask why you have the netting over your blueberries?
Because the birds get in the habit of going in there, and the berries are just starting to form up, and if they start going in there, I'm afraid I'm going to trap one, and I don't want one to die in there. So
now we are looking in Sue's greenhouse, which is loaded with tomatoes and peppers, eggplant. It's going to be a salsa garden. Lovely, Sue. So we're just finishing up here in Sue's beautiful garden, and I'm looking at this wonderful wall of bird houses. Thank you, Sue, very much for inviting us to your beautiful garden. We've really enjoyed ourselves.
it was a pleasure to have you.